terrorism.
Yeah.
I know you talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I know you saw CNN is reporting that the U.S. is considering labeling Russia a purveyor of state-sponsored terrorism. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is that true that you are considering that? Tell us a little bit about how that would work out.
Well, let me just take a step back for a second so everybody knows how this process works, which you all may already know. But for a country to be designated as a state sponsor of terrorism, the Secretary of State would have to determine the government of that country has repeatedly provided support for acts of international terrorism. And only 4 countries have been designated to date, right? Cuba, North Korea, Iran, and Syria. The designation is defined by statute, meaning Congress has written into law the exact criteria under which a state would qualify as a state sponsor of terrorism. So I know my colleague over at the State Department, Ned Price, has said there's a lot of asks that President Zelensky has. We're looking at a range of them. I don't have an update on what their process may or may not look like. I would point to them to speak to that because it's determined by the statute from Congress, by the State Department.
Jen, how concerned is the White House about the IMF's prediction of seismic problems for the economy around the world due to Ukraine, and also just following on from that, is there a sense that if this goes on, which it looks like it will in Ukraine, the fallout for other countries could eventually pressure the alliance that the president's been building to basically dial back a bit, even if the Ukrainians want to push on, maybe like try and force them into reaching a settlement that. Yeah.
Well, okay. On the second question, I would say that we've known from the beginning that unity doesn't happen by accident. It requires a great deal of work, a great deal of diplomacy, a great deal of discussion. And that's part of the reason the president had the P+11 call this morning, to continue to keep other countries updated, whether it's NATO or the G7 or other groups of countries, on what we're considering in terms of sanctions, what we're considering in terms of military assistance, what other countries are doing. Sometimes there's equipment the Ukrainians want we don't have. We discuss that with them as well. So that's why there's so much time and effort from the president, from the Secretary of State, others is being spent on this exactly. I would say on the IMF projections, I would note that the projection for the United States and our growth still continues to be higher than the vast majority of the world, right? And that is a sign of the strength of our economy. But it is true, and we've said this from the beginning, that the invasion of Ukraine by President Putin and Russia is going to have a continued impact on the global economy, whether it is on the oil markets or other areas. And certainly that's something we are aware of, even as the strength of our own economy, we have a strong basis to build on through this difficult time.
On the call.